Hello gamers, my name is Spark, and today I'm going to show you an awesome, one-of-a-kind tool that you can use at your D&D or other TTRPG table. In this video I'm going to show you a shop generator. This is a great tool for GMs who need to create a shop with inventory at the drop of a hat. If you're a player and you feel like your GM might use this, send it on over to them. Be advised, I did build this generator specific to D&D 5e, but with just a little bit of tweaking, it can work for practically any TTRPG. Here's how this video is going to go. For starters, I'm going to show you the basics of how this tool works and how you can use it at your table. Then I'm going to show you what's happening behind the scenes to make the generator work and how you can customize it to better fit your campaign. The whole purpose of this generator is to make it easy for the GM to generate a shop with inventory without needing to do a bunch of prep work beforehand, while still providing a wide variety of materials that your players might want to buy. You can see up here in the top in the settings that we have 10 different types of shops that can be generated. Apothecary, art salon, beast market, blacksmith, clothing shop, farmer's market, general store, magical goods, novelty shops, and specialty shops. So actually saying that there are 10 different shops is a bit of a misnomer, because specialty in and of itself actually contains several other shops that could be generated. I'm actually going to jump over here to the reference tab, and you can see right here these are all the different types of specialty stores. We have basket weavers, bookstores, breweries, candle makers, carpenters, clockmakers, cobblers, glass blowers, hourglassiers, jewelers, leathersmiths, stonemasons, tanners, and wainwrights. All of those can be generated as part of the specialty result. And we're going to take a look at some of that, what that looks like. Another setting that you can tweak here is the quantity of stock that can be generated in this shop, the diversity of stock, and the quality of stock. All of these have different settings. You can set it to random if you want to let the dice decide, or you can set quantity to limited, average, or ample. Obviously, limited quantity means that the shop isn't going to have lots of things for sale. Ample would mean that it does. Diversity of stock, narrow means that it's going to be limited to the variety of things for sale, where broad would be much more broad, obviously. And quality refers to how common or rare the goods in the shop might be, anywhere from base to rare. And you get to set all of those, or you can leave them to random, again, to let the dice decide. You also have this setting right here where you can determine whether you want the shop to generate the item's price for you or not. Depending upon how you as the GM run your table, you might decide that you don't like my particular monetary pricing system. You can turn that off and then come up with your own prices if you want to, or you can leave that on and the generator will tell you the price of each good. So those are just a few of the settings. Let's go ahead and click generate and see what we get. Alright, so over here in the gray box, we have the Lavender Sculptor. That is the name of our art salon. Here in the gray, we have artful items and prices given. You can kind of ignore those two cells in this situation. These two cells only really apply when either it's a specialty shop or if prices are turned off. Down here in this section, we get the proprietor, or the person who's running this shop. In this case, we get their name, which is Epaulet. Their age and gender, you get that little pop-up box to tell you what AG means. Their age and gender, it's an adult male. We get its race as an elf. And we get one unique trait about this proprietor. In this case, he's a coward. So this section gives you the opportunity to introduce your players to who is behind the counter, gives you one little trait to work with, and as a GM, you can take that trait and run with it. Underneath that, you get a brief description of the structure that this shop is inside of. So in this case, it says it's a huge structure with vine and brush covered walls, a brown tile roof, and an imposing stout door. A sheet of etched dark iron above the door reads the name of the shop and shows a variety of colorful splatters. So this gives you, the GM, something that you can read to your players, and all of this is to save you the creative energy of having to kind of create this stuff on the spot, or maybe the day before when you're prepping, you don't have to generate all of this from your own individual imagination. You can just come here, click the generate button, and it gives it to you instantaneously. These four sections over here are where the stock is generated. In this case, it looks like we have about 11 items for sale, or at least 11 unique items, but notice here that it does tell you how many of those this shop has in stock at present, and it does give you the price of each of those items as well. Now, given that this is an art shop, we're getting things like a large well-made tapestry or a small gold idol or a carved ivory statuette. And the items that are going to be for sale are obviously dependent upon the type of shop that is generated. So this gives us kind of an idea of what the art salon might generate. We're going to come up here and turn off the art salon. And now with that setting turned off, art salons will never be generated. And that's how these checkboxes work up here. Any type of shop that you don't want to possibly be generated, just untick those checkboxes and that type of shop will not be generated. So it looks like our new type of shop is a beast market called the Diverse Pens. It's run by Otho, an old non-binary tiefling who shares the shop with their kin, gives us a description of that building, and then here, given that it's a beast market, it gives us a bunch of beasts that might be for sale, as well as things like saddles and bits and bridles and other items that would likely be sale at a beast market. Now, having taken a look at a couple different examples of shops, let's start toying around with these stock features. We're going to turn off the generator for a second. We're going to make quantity of stock limited, diversity of stock broad, and quality of stock average. Press generate. Here we see we've got Godfrey's Smart Trunk, and this is a clothing shop run by Godfrey, and that's where the name of the shop came from. It came from the name of the proprietor, which the generator will sometimes do and sometimes won't. This is an adult male genasi who has a dead eye. And given that this is a clothing shop, obviously we've got a bunch of clothes, magical and non-magical. And let's talk about the results that we got here. Quantity of stock is limited, and you'll notice that means we only have 1 or 2 of each of these items that are for sale. However, we have diversity of stock broad, which is why we've generated more here than we did on the last 2 examples. And the quality of stock is average, which means we're getting some of these magical items like the Cloak of the Manta Ray, but we're not going to be getting any of those super rare or highly magical items. We've taken a look at the beast market and the clothing shop. Let's turn those off. We're going to change quantity of stock to ample, diversity of stock to narrow, and quality of stock to rare. And just to show you how this works, I'm going to turn price off and click generate. Now here we've generated a farmer's market, and you'll notice over here that we do not generate any prices. That's because we turned that setting off, but it does tell us right here that prices are above average. So this allows you as the GM to determine whatever prices you want them to be, but this does let you know whatever prices you would put those supplies or food at normally, you can just bump it up by a couple silver or gold. You've got the proprietor and the structure, and here we can see we only have 4 items for sale. This is because we had the diversity of stock narrow. So not a lot of diversity, but the quantity is ample. That's why we're getting 5 beads of nourishment for sale, 5 cooking utensil sets for sale, and so forth. That's an example of the farmer's market. Let's turn that off and see what we get next. Now we're getting a magical goods called Edward's Esoteric Outlet, run by Edward, the half-elf. And we can take a look at some of these results, and you'll notice that some of these are pretty significant magical items like the Instant Fortress. That's because we have the quality of stock set to rare, so we have the potential for this shop having really rare items, as we explained before. We're going to set these all back to random now, because that's how we like it, right? This is tabletop gaming. Let the dice decide. Me personally, I do like having the prices on. We're going to turn off the magical goods. Here we have the Mighty Claw, which is a blacksmith. And it looks like we've got an ample diversity and an ample quantity. Yes, we had these set to random over here, but given that we're getting 6 copies of this +1 armor, and that we have 2 full sections of gear for sale here, my guess is that we had diversity and quantity roll to the ample and maximum. So you'll notice that we have some things that are extremely expensive, and that's good. That gives your players something to save up for. Now, it probably goes without saying, as I mentioned at the beginning, that all of this is customizable. You can decide what sorts of items are in the generator and are not. So if you're like armor of invulnerability, there's no way any blacksmith would be selling that. If that existed, they would be hoarding it. Some prince or lord would be owning it or buying it or commissioning it. And there's just no way. If you agree to that, then either you can come into the quality and set it to average or base so that that expensive of an item is not likely to be generated, or you can come into the back half of the generator and remove that item from the list altogether, which I'm going to show you how to do. Let's go ahead and turn off all of these ones, and I just want to show you the specialty shop because it functions just a little bit differently. You'll notice now that this says specialty, and now up here we get the bold where it says the tanner. If you remember back over here, we had our specialty list, the tanner is right there. And so given that the specialty was generated, it pulled randomly from this list what type of specialty shop it was. We got the tanner on this one, and now we have the various goods that might be for sale here at this tannery. And that's the basic functionality of the generator. If we scroll down a little bit here, we have what's called the shop catalog, and this is a place for you to store previously generated shops and their goods for sale. So you'll notice over here on the left, we have these little expand buttons, and you'll notice that the section here looks identical to what's up here in the generated results. And the reason that we have a shop catalog at all is because everything up here in the results is what's called a dynamic cell. So if we click generate here, we've got a bunch of results. We've got the Studious Artifacts, which is a magical goods place. And let's say that our players come in here and they're looking at these things that are for sale and they're interested, and maybe they fell in love with Thedwin, the Minotaur, and this is a place that your players are going to want to come back and visit again. You just know that, or maybe you don't, but you want to be prepared in case they do. You need to be able to have a way to save this, but here's the catch. If I hit any key at any time, then the entire generator recycles. So notice I've got a little cell selected over here, and watch what happens when I press delete. You notice that it cycled through every time, and now that one shop with the Minotaur, that's gone forever, and we can never get it back. It doesn't matter if I click edit undo, that shop is gone forever, and that's what it means to have dynamic cells. So we need to have somewhere that we can save these shops where they're not going to reset. And that's what the shop catalog is for. So how do we do this? You're just going to copy the shop that you want to save. You're going to highlight from the name all the way to the bottom right corner down in cell R20. You're going to copy those cells. You're going to scroll down into the shop catalog. You're going to select where the title would go. Right click, paste special, values only. And now you'll notice that that shop that we were looking at has been pasted here. Now watch what happens when I click delete. Nothing changes. Why? Because these cells are no longer dynamic cells. So this gives you the opportunity to save it, and then gives you the opportunity to maybe copy this shop and its wares somewhere else, wherever it is that you keep your regular notes or what have you. And when you're done with this, you can just come in and select it all and press delete. And now it's clear, clean, and ready to go for the next time. You can minimize that. And when there is a shop saved in here, you'll notice up here in the little tracker, it tells you that slot number 1 is used. This is slot number 1. It's letting you know that it's used. You can minimize that. It's still there. You haven't lost it. It's just not taking up as much screen space. And then, yeah, when you're done, you can just highlight that, press delete, slot 1 is available, minimize, and you're good to go. Oh, and one additional note. When you are pasting, make sure you don't just click paste. So if I come up here and I just click paste, you'll notice that we don't have any sort of stock. We can look up here in the formula bar and see that we have a formula, but it's not generating anything. It is broken. If you try to just paste directly, it will not function correctly. You need to make sure to paste special, values only. And that's it for the basic functionality of this generator. This isn't my only generator, by the way. I have dozens that I think you'll find interesting. This table that you see on screen now shows all the generators that I've created and which of them, at the time of publishing this video, have video tutorials like this one. All of my generators are available at buymeacoffee.com for just a couple bucks. Links are in the description. If you're enjoying this video, now would be a great time to share it with other gamers. Please hit the like button and subscribe. It really helps me out. It's customization that sets my random generators apart from all the others. If you're a widely experienced GM, you've absolutely come across other shop and goods generators before, but none of them have behaved quite like this one. What sets this one apart is that you can go into the back half and customize the code and the master lists to personally craft your own spectrum of results based upon your world and how you believe the market would be functioning in your world. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to show you how to do that customization. Every single one of my generators has a reference tab. If you come down here into the bottom left corner, you will see the shop:"ref" tab, and that's where we were looking earlier when I showed you the specialty stores list. This is the reference tab, and this sheet is the mechanics, the nuts and bolts that makes this machine function. So now I'm going to show you how you can edit all of this to adjust the results. Let's start over here in column A. This is what's called an endless list. Now, obviously the list itself is not endless. There's only 5 items there, but you can add to this list as far as you would like to. So I've given you 5 levels of prices that could be generated if prices are turned off. So notice over here in the results, prices are turned on, and so right here it just says prices given and we get the actual prices. But if I turn this to no, notice it says prices above average. Where does above average come from? Right here, above average. And so if you want to add some more variety to the prices or the descriptor of the prices when the monetary price values are turned off, you can add to this list. This generator is built on this idea of endless lists. So let's say you wanted to add an additional descriptor of prices here that could be possible. Let's say you come in and you write extreme. And so now it's possible that over here in the results, prices extreme could be a result because you've added that in this list. You can add as many items in this column as you would like to, hypothetically tens of thousands if you wanted to. And anything you add into this column can potentially be generated over here in the results. If you want to remove something from this list, if it's at the bottom of the list like the word extreme is, you can just delete it and that's fine. And let's say you want to remove something from the middle of the list, like that. Yes, technically the word average isn't there anymore, but now there's a hole in the middle of the list, and that can break the generator. You never want to leave a hole in the middle of a list. So instead, if you ever want to delete something out of the middle of a list, you're going to right-click on that one that you want deleted. You're going to delete cells, shift cells up. So now notice that average is gone and there's no hole. And you might be thinking, what's the big deal? There were only 5, I could just copy and paste and move it up. Well, look over here, we have very long lists that are available for you to edit. And it would be really tedious for you to try to do that hands-on manipulation of the list yourself, whereas the delete cells shift up function is very clean and easy. So that's it for column A. Column B and C are where you adjust the age and gender of the proprietor. You've got young adult, adult, and old, but this is an endless list. You can add to this list if you want. Same thing with male, female, or other. Ignore these 2 pink cells right here where it says female. That's just part of the functionality of the generator, but you can add or remove to these lists. Columns D and E are for the races. What race is the proprietor going to be? You have a capped list. This is not an infinite list. You can only go so far as row 23. But between rows 3 and row 23, you have the ability to add in whatever you want to or remove. And the idea here is that this column is where you would put in the dominant races in your world, and this is where you would put in the minority races. And the idea being, of course, that dominant races should be generated more often than minority races because they're a minority. What is the percentage likelihood of a minority race? Right now, it's set to 25%. So there's a 75% chance of the proprietor being dominant and a 25% chance of them being minority. You can change this percentage if you would like to. You can enter any percentage between 0 and 100. If you don't like the idea of there being dominant or minority, you can just change this to 50%, and that way there's an equal chance of dominant or minority. Down here, just below that, we have Dragonborn races. This is just if Dragonborn is selected in the results, it will then pull from these lists to determine the subrace of that Dragonborn. You can add or remove to those lists. Those are both infinite lists. Here in columns F and G, we have the names. The generator only gives you the first name, and so we have a list of male first names and a list of female first names. If the generated gender is other, it will pull randomly from either of these columns. These are infinite lists. You can add or remove to these lists however you like. There are currently 385 male names and 385 female names, so hopefully you never get the same name twice. In column H, we have the quirk of the proprietor. These are just sentences that were written in. You can add or remove to these. That is an infinite list. You currently have 52 in the list. Scrolling right a little bit more, in columns I and J, we have shops and their stock. Most of this you're not going to adjust at all. So let me show you what not to touch here first. Column J, don't touch anything in column J. That's all just functionality. Nothing in here is meant to be edited. Notice if you click on this cell here where it says carved ivory statuette and you look up here in the formula bar, there's quite a in-depth formula that's happening up here to get those results. So if you type anything into this cell, it's going to overwrite all of that formula and break the function of the generator. So before you edit anything here in the back half, or really anything anywhere in this generator on either tab, make sure that the cell formula bar does not have formulas inside of it. So ignore column J. Column I, you are going to ignore everything below row 14. So row 14 is where it says final inventory, and then you've got sections below that. Ignore all of that. The only things you are going to edit are these numbers. So what are these numbers? Remember back here in the generator where we had the number of items that were generated, and we saw that sometimes there could be 6 copies of that item, and then sometimes there's only 1. That's what these cells adjust. It all comes down to the quantity of stock. So if the quantity of stock is limited, then we only get 1s and 2s, right? Where do those 1s and 2s come from? Right here, 1s and 2s. What we have here are what's called a min-max table. The min-max table is where it will randomly generate a number between the minimum and the maximum. So in this case, it randomly generates a number between 1 and 2. That's why over here we only have 1s and 2s. If I were to come in here and change this limited quantity max to, let's say, 5, and then we come back here, we can see that we're getting results as high as 5 and as low as 1. That's because we changed the minimum and maximums. So this is where you can customize how many copies of an item a shop might generate if they have a limited quantity of stock. So you can change those two numbers, and then here in the orange cells we have the quantity of stock if their quantity is average, between 1 and 4, and then ample quantity max and min, 1 and 6. You can change all 6 of those numbers to best reflect how you want your generator to function. Just be advised that the minimums must always be equal to or less than the maximums. If you have the minimums higher than the maximums, then it will break the generator. Alright, let's scroll over here to column K, and we can see that we have an expansion box up here. Let's click that, and we have a whole bunch of new stuff that just popped up. This section is where we adjust the shop stock and its prices. And you'll notice that we have a different section for each of the types of shops. So this is our apothecary, that's our beast market, that's our art salon, blacksmith. Scroll all the way to the right and you can see our novelty shop. And then underneath that, we have our specialty shops, basket weaver, bookstore, brewery, etc., all the way over here to column BE. So what is all of this information? This is where we're going to determine the price of the goods that are listed and what possible goods are listed. If we come back to the main generator page, remember there's the quality of stock, and we had that at base, average, or rare, and we said that if it was set to rare, you'd be getting much more powerful items that could possibly be for sale. How does that happen? That is what this section is for here. We'll come back to the prices in a second. If you scroll down, we're just going to look here at the apothecary. If you scroll down, you'll notice we have a bunch of blues, and every item in this blue section is what's considered base. Base is always blue in this generator, and you can add or remove to this list if you want to. Technically it's capped, but it is theoretically infinite. Let me show you how to add to this list. So let's say that you had another base apothecary type item that you wanted to add into this list, but there's no bottom. I mean, you could scroll down to the bottom, but the problem is if you type it in down here, then it's actually not going to be included at all. And if it is, then it's only going to be included as a rare level item, and that's not what we're going for because you're wanting to add a base level item. So how do we do that? You are just going to highlight any 2 cells here in the middle of this list. So in this case, we're going to go orb. In one row, you're going to highlight column L and M. Just making sure you get both the item and its price. I'm going to say that again. Make sure you get the item and its price. And you're going to right click, insert cells, shift cells down. Now what you've done is you've created a hole where you can type in your new item. I'm going to change these 2 cells to yellow just so it's easier for us to see what we're looking at. So you've got the title in here, but we're missing the price. Now do not enter the price of this item in manually unless you want the price to always be the same. If you want this item that you've created to always be 50 gold pieces, then sure, you can type in 50 gold pieces, and now while all the other prices are cycling, that item's price never cycles. But if you want there to be some random generation to the price, do not enter anything in there. Instead, what you're going to do is you're going to click on the cell above it. And you'll notice if you look up here in the formula bar, we have a formula up here. And what we're going to do is we're going to take that formula and we're going to apply it to this empty cell. How do we do that? Select that cell, the one that has the formula in it. And you'll notice there's this little blue box in the bottom right-hand corner of that selected cell. You're going to hover your mouse over that until you get that black plus symbol. You're going to click, drag it down into and over that cell, and let go. And now you'll notice that the formula exists now in that cell. applicable to that cell specifically. So now what we've effectively done is we've added an item and we've made it so that a price is randomly generated for it as per the rules of the rest of the prices in this section. So that's how you're going to add items for base, for average, and for rare levels of quality. Again, I'm going to say if you're adding something into the rare level of quality, do not add it down here at the bottom. It's actually better for you to add it in the middle like I just showed you. This is true across all of these lists. All of these lists are infinite lists if you follow the technique I just showed you. And then of course, like I showed you earlier, if you do want to delete something out of a list, you don't want it included, you don't want to leave a blank in the middle, so you're going to select both cells, the item and its price. You're going to select both, right click, delete cells, shift cells up, and now there's no gap. For the apothecary, for the beast market, for the farmer's market, for the general store, this is how you curate all of the items that are going to be for sale in each of the different types of shops. Now let's talk about prices. We noticed that these prices are randomly generating, but where do those come from? And they come from these areas right here. You probably already figured this out. These are min-max tables that create the price of the given item based upon its quality range. So for all the items that are in the blue, it's going to generate a price between 10 and 100. For all the items that are in the orange, it's going to generate a price between 100 and 1,000. And for all the items in the red, between 1,000 and 10,000. Now, I'm describing this more easily than it actually functions. If you were to come down here and change the mood mark paint to red or to the same reddish color, that's not going to automatically apply the prices. This functions much more based upon where it is in the generator, not what color it is. But I use the colors to help me wrap my head around what's going on and where. And so each one of these shops has its own price range min-max table, so you can go through all of these shops and adjust the prices minimum and maximum based upon what you feel like would be appropriate for your given economy and how valuable you think a gold piece is in your world. In my world, I generally equate 1 copper to $1, 1 silver to $10, and 1 gold to $100. But that's just me. Obviously, lots of people do it different ways. So if you understood all of that, you know what to do in all of these cells and all of these different columns over here. We're going to minimize that section. Here are your list of specialty stores. That's probably better for you to just leave this alone. Our next expandable section is the shop title names. We can expand this, and this is all just infinite lists based upon the different types of shops. So each shop has an adjective and a noun to create the shop's name. So the apothecary has a list of adjectives and a list of nouns. These are infinite lists. You can add or remove to them. And then same thing with all of these other types of shops. This allows us some variety to the names of the shops that are generated, and that those names are applicable to the type of shops that's generated while still having some diversity. That's a pretty easy section. You can just minimize that. Our next section over here is the appearance section, and this is where we get the physical appearance of the building, like we see down here in this tile down here. And if we look up here in this gray cell, we see what's called the Mad Lib, and this gives you the sentence structure that is being used to generate the result. And each one of these bracketed words up here in the Mad Lib lines up with its corresponding section underneath that. So size pulls from this column, and again, it's an infinite list. You can add or remove to it. Describe walls comes from this section, and so forth. So you can tweak what types of buildings and what they look like and what they're made of to your heart's content in these sections by adding or removing to the lists. And then our very last section over here on the right is the sign details. We can expand that, and this functions the exact same of what we were just looking at. If we look back over at the results, we see that the description of this beast market says that a painted mural over the window reads the name and shows an ox and plow. The painted mural comes from right here in the appearance section, but then what is the painted mural? In our results, it was saying an ox and plow. Where does that come from? It comes from this list here, an ox and plow right there in the list of sign details underneath the beast market section. And that's exactly what all of this is. These are additional sign details for reading to your players, and you can add or remove to these lists. These are all infinite lists. No Mad Libs here. You're going to write in exactly the description, whether basic or detailed, of what the sign might look like for that shop. And you can close that, and that is it. That is all of the customization, and that is it for the shop generator. Thank you very much for watching. Remember, I have dozens of other generators, so be sure to check them out here on YouTube or at buymeacoffee.com. Please like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video, and happy gaming.